Last time I've talked about what self-efficacy is to musicians. You might have started to realize that there are actually a lot to think about other than techniques and musicalities as a musician. And there are a lot of things in common that can be applied to all musicians with the same philosophies. It doesn't matter if you're a singer, a pianist, a clarinetist, or a violinist. We all have the same aspiration. We all want to perform well. Even though you think you will become a teacher in the future, the desire is there. In any situation, you still want to give a performance that people love to listen to. You want to perform well in front of others. And that causes us to have the same concern. We all need to deal with performance anxiety. Now, before I tell you how you can overcome performance anxiety and the stress that you will have before your performance, I want to tell you a true story of my own. There was one time I performed in front of a few hundred people. It was about 6 years ago. The average age of the audience was about the same age as I was at that time. I was very nervous on that day, and I was playing an excerpt from Mozart Violin Concerto in A major. After a few minutes of playing, I had memory slips. I repeated the phrase a few times. I just couldn't figure out what the next phrase should be. I was panicking, and then I skipped to another passage. I was feeling so bad after the performance. Perhaps many people will think that this kind of situation is actually quite familiar, because it happens very often if you learn music for years and if you need to perform frequently. This wasn't simply a precious experience playing on stage. What I've learned after I had performance has completely changed how I think about music performance, as well as my attitude towards playing on stage. I talked to people after my performance, and I was trying to get some feedback from the audience. What surprised me was that I found that people actually didn't understand what I was playing. It wasn't because I had a bad interpretation. It's simply because they didn't pay attention to what piece I was playing. They just didn't listen, and therefore they didn't even know I had made a mistake. Well, you probably think that I should be very happy about it, because people didn't know I had made a mistake, and there were actually a few seconds of silence before I skipped to the next passage. But all I was thinking at that moment was no longer about how bad I had played, but instead, I felt sad because no one had actually listened to my performance. After years of learning music, I started to realize that as a performer, I need to understand the meaning of performing in front of people. Why do I play music? Why do I perform? I perform isn't because I want to play something and get the job done on stage. I am very happy as long as someone's listening. I perform because I want to show something to someone who listens. Whenever there are flaws in the performance, I still feel glad about having the opportunity to perform, because at least people are there to listen. And if they don't like my performance or give comments to my playing, I don't feel disappointed, because what it means might be because they have respected me with their ears, and they really have listened to me. This is how I see performance. And you should know the reason why you need to perform as well. You need to know the intention behind your performance. I do think that everyone should think of a more deeper meaning or a meaningful reason behind performing to others, so that you have a more meaningful purpose of doing so. And therefore, you need to ask yourself, why do you perform? Do you perform for the sake of playing something perfectly on stage? If you have performance anxiety, ask yourself, why do you perform? The reason shouldn't be only aiming for perfect techniques. What about aiming at a better control in sound quality? Maybe more attention to the composer's intention? Or the directions of the whole musical phrases? And what about the overall musical expression? And, of course, the character of the piece as well. If you focus on things like these, other than techniques, you will be more enjoyable when you perform, less anxious before giving a performance, and more positivity after giving the performance. If you are afraid of showing what you have prepared to people because you are simply afraid the performance won't be the best that you can do, and if you think that people will think of you in a different way because you felt like you're not good enough, you need to reconsider what performance truly means to you. People out there can be mean, but at the same time, a lot of them can be very nice people. Rather than wasting all your energy to think whether you can play perfectly in front of potentially judgmental people, again, think of a deeper meaning behind the purpose of your performance. And this is one of the factors that is under your control. Once you have a peaceful mind, you can be able to accomplish a higher quality performance. Going back to the topic, finding the meaning of your performance. Everyone has a different definition of his own. But for me, if no one knows what I'm doing, then what's the point? People with performance anxiety have rather low self-efficacy, and they don't want mistakes and flaws, and which makes them more anxious. In the psychological perspective for analyzing what causes performance anxiety, there are actually so many different factors that could possibly affect the anxiety level before and during the performance. The simplest explanation could be when we are nervous, it is easier to make mistakes. And the vicious circle goes on and on. Now, if you pay attention to this statement, I don't want to make mistakes. This is what people with performance anxiety will generally think about. And let me tell you one thing. You don't want to make mistakes because you believe you are going to make mistakes. And the whole logic starts with your misbelief. If you have practiced for so long and you still believe that you will give a rather bad performance, you might need to think about the way you practice again. But if you are sure that you have practiced well, the only thing you need to overcome might be the way you believe in your ability. And when you know what performance means to you, you will then find a way to convince yourself that you will be able to convey what you want to deliver to the audience. And this is what we call the self-talk. So why do you perform? How do you see yourself as a performer? I'm glad to have people who really listen to my performance. If you think the audience are kind of scary, they might be your teacher, the examiners, or your friends. Before you think that they are judgmental or could possibly upset you with all the comments, I want you to look at how you see them first. Have you been judgmental to yourself and the people around you? Never see anyone so threatening, because the only person who threatens you is yourself. It doesn't matter how you talk to yourself as long as you have your own principle of seeing things. The principle that you hold will help you to defend all the negativities before and during your performance. I hope you've got a new perspective of how you can think differently in terms of the way you define performance, so that it helps you to get rid of performance anxiety. Thank you for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll be sharing more perspectives on music learning, practicing, and performing. Make sure you give us a thumbs up, share it to your friends, and make sure you turn on the notification button for the latest updates. Stay tuned, and I'll see you next time.